Question 1. Research into the appropriate response for a China railway construction employee who is directly offered a personal financial incentive by a potential supplier to ensure a favorable contract award, considering the company's commitment to ethical business practices and compliance with national anti-corruption regulations. Option A. Confront the supplier directly, expressing disappointment with the offer and suggesting a higher personal incentive for a guaranteed contract. Option B. Immediately report the offer through the company's designated internal reporting channels, such as the compliance department or a confidential hotline, without engaging further with the supplier regarding the bribe. Option C. Ignore the offer and continue with the standard procurement process, assuming the supplier will not pursue the matter further. Option D. Accept the bribe to expedite the contract process and ensure the project's timely commencement, believing it is a common practice in certain business environments. Correct answer is B. Immediately report the offer through the company's designated internal reporting channels, such as the compliance department or a confidential hotline, without engaging further with the supplier regarding the bribe. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to the ethical and regulatory obligations of a China railway construction employee when encountering potential bribery. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need to report suspicious activity with the potential personal repercussions and the importance of gathering sufficient, credible information without compromising an investigation or personal safety. Navigating this requires a deep understanding of China railway construction's internal policies and relevant national anti-corruption laws. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves immediately reporting the suspicious offer through the designated internal channels, such as the company's compliance department or a confidential hotline. This aligns with the principles of corporate governance and anti-corruption regulations prevalent in China, which mandate reporting of such incidents. China railway construction, as a state-affiliated enterprise, is subject to stringent oversight and is expected to maintain a zero-tolerance policy towards bribery. Prompt internal reporting ensures that the company can initiate its own investigation, protect its reputation, and comply with its legal obligations to prevent and detect corruption. This approach prioritizes ethical conduct and adherence to regulatory frameworks designed to uphold the integrity of business dealings. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to accept the bribe and proceed with the contract, believing it will expedite the process. This is a direct violation of China's anti-bribery laws and the company's code of conduct. It not only exposes the individual to severe legal penalties, including imprisonment and fines, but also compromises the integrity of the procurement process, potentially leading to substandard project execution and significant financial losses for China railway construction. Ethically, it represents a betrayal of trust and professional responsibility. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the offer and continue as if nothing happened, without reporting it. This inaction can be interpreted as tacit approval or complicity, especially if the bribe is later discovered. It fails to uphold the duty to report illegal or unethical activities, which is a cornerstone of corporate compliance and anti-corruption efforts. By not reporting, individual misses an opportunity to prevent potential future corruption and protect the company from reputational damage and legal repercussions. A third incorrect approach is to confront the individual offering the bribe directly and demand a larger sum. This is not only unethical and illegal, but also extremely dangerous. It escalates the situation, increases the risk of personal harm, and transforms a reporting obligation into an act of extortion. This behavior is fundamentally at odds with any regulatory framework or ethical standard governing professional conduct and would likely result in severe disciplinary action and criminal prosecution. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should follow a structured decision-making process. First, recognize the situation as a potential ethical and legal breach. Second, consult internal company policies and relevant national laws regarding bribery and corruption. Third, prioritize reporting through official, confidential channels to protect oneself and the company. Fourth, avoid any actions that could be construed as complicity, acceptance, or escalation of the corrupt offer. Finally, cooperate fully with any subsequent investigation. This systematic approach ensures adherence to legal and ethical standards, safeguarding both the individual and the organization. Question 2. Quality control measures reveal a deviation from the approved material specifications for a critical load-bearing component in a newly constructed railway bridge segment. The deviation was identified during a routine inspection before the next phase of construction is scheduled to commence. What is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Implement a quick, on-site modification to the component to bring it closer to the approved specifications without formal documentation or expert consultation. Option B. Overlook the deviation, assuming it will not be detected during future inspections and will not impact the long-term performance of the bridge. Option C. Immediately halt all construction in the affected area. Conduct a thorough root cause analysis of the deviation. Consult with project engineers and relevant regulatory bodies, and develop a documented corrective action plan before resuming work. Option D. Proceed with the next phase of construction while initiating an investigation into the deviation, assuming the deviation is minor and unlikely to cause immediate structural issues. The correct answer is C. Immediately halt all construction in the affected area. Conduct a thorough root cause analysis of the deviation, consult with project engineers and relevant regulatory bodies, and develop a documented corrective action plan before resuming work. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in large-scale construction projects where adherence to stringent quality control protocols is paramount for safety, compliance, and project success. The discovery of a deviation from approved specifications requires immediate and decisive action, balancing the need for timely project progression with the imperative to maintain quality and regulatory compliance. The challenge lies in identifying the root cause, assessing the impact of the deviation, and implementing corrective actions without compromising the structural integrity or safety of the railway infrastructure. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach, which involves a thorough investigation into the cause of the deviation, consultation with the project's technical experts and relevant regulatory bodies, and the development of a documented corrective action plan before proceeding, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the principles of robust quality management systems mandated by China Railway Construction's internal guidelines and relevant national standards for railway engineering. It ensures that any deviation is understood, its implications are assessed, and remedial measures are implemented in a controlled and compliant manner, thereby preventing recurrence and upholding the safety and reliability of the railway. This systematic approach minimizes risks and demonstrates due diligence. Incorrect approach is analysis. Proceeding with construction without fully understanding the cause and impact of the deviation is a direct violation of quality control procedures and potentially national safety regulations for railway construction. It prioritizes speed over safety and compliance, creating significant risks of structural failure, operational issues, and potential legal liabilities. This approach disregards the principle of prevention is better than cure and fails to uphold the professional responsibility to ensure the integrity of the infrastructure. Implementing a quick fix without proper documentation or expert consultation bypasses critical quality assurance steps. It may not address the root cause, leading to recurring issues or unforeseen consequences. This approach lacks the rigor required by industry standards and regulatory frameworks, which emphasize thoroughness and traceability in all quality-related decisions and actions. Ignoring the deviation and hoping it goes unnoticed is a severe ethical and professional lapse. It demonstrates a disregard for safety, quality, and regulatory compliance, potentially endangering public safety and the reputation of China Railway Construction. This approach is fundamentally dishonest and undermines the entire purpose of quality control and regulatory oversight. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should follow a structured decision-making process. 1. Immediate halt and assessment. Stop work in the affected area and conduct an initial assessment of the deviation. 2. Root cause analysis. Investigate thoroughly to identify why the deviation occurred. This may involve reviewing design documents, material certifications, construction methods, and personnel actions. 3. Impact assessment. Determine the potential consequences of the deviation on structural integrity, safety, functionality, and compliance. 4. Consultation. Engage with project engineers, quality control specialists, and relevant authorities, e.g., China Railway's oversight departments, National Railway Safety Administration, to discuss findings and potential solutions. 5. Corrective action plan. Develop a detailed, documented plan for rectification, including necessary modifications, material replacements, or rework. This plan must be approved by relevant stakeholders. 6. Implementation and verification. Execute the corrective action plan and rigorously verify its effectiveness through re-inspection and testing. 7. Documentation. Maintain comprehensive records of the deviation, investigation, corrective actions, and verification for future reference and audits. Question 3. The efficiency study reveals that certain construction methodologies employed on a major China railway construction project are time-consuming and resource-intensive. To accelerate progress and reduce operational costs, a proposal is put forth to adopt a new, unproven technique that promises significant time savings, but has not undergone formal risk assessment or been explicitly approved by the relevant technical oversight committees. Which of the following represents the most professionally sound approach to evaluating and potentially implementing this proposal? Option A. Reject the proposal outright due to its unproven nature, prioritizing the use of established and familiar construction methods regardless of their efficiency limitations. Option B. Immediately implement the new technique across the project to capitalize on the potential time and cost savings, assuming that the efficiency gains will inherently outweigh any unforeseen issues. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive pilot study of the new technique on a smaller, controlled section of the project, rigorously documenting all outcomes, safety metrics, and compliance with relevant China railway construction technical standards and national railway construction regulations before considering wider adoption. Option D. Delegate the decision-making authority to the site supervisors to implement the new technique if they deem it feasible, without further centralized review or documentation. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive pilot study of the new technique on a smaller, controlled section of the project, rigorously documenting all outcomes, safety metrics, and compliance with relevant China railway construction technical standards and national railway construction regulations before considering wider adoption. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the pursuit of operational efficiency with adherence to the stringent regulatory framework governing China railway construction projects. The core tension lies in identifying and implementing improvements that genuinely enhance productivity without compromising safety, quality, or compliance with established procedures and standards. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between superficial changes and substantive improvements that align with the company's strategic objectives and regulatory obligations. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, data-driven evaluation of proposed changes. This involves a thorough review of existing processes, identification of bottlenecks, and the development of solutions that are not only efficient, but also demonstrably compliant with China railway construction's internal policies and relevant national regulations. Such an approach ensures that efficiency gains are sustainable and do not introduce new risks or violate established norms. It reflects a commitment to responsible project management and operational excellence, aligning with the principles of good governance and corporate responsibility expected within the industry. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without considering the impact on operational integrity would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to the adoption of substandard materials or practices, thereby violating safety regulations and potentially compromising the structural integrity of the railway infrastructure. Another incorrect approach that bypasses established approval processes for implementing changes, even if seemingly beneficial, would be a direct breach of internal governance and procedural compliance. This undermines accountability and introduces an unacceptable level of risk. Furthermore, an approach that prioritizes speed of implementation over thorough risk assessment and stakeholder consultation would fail to meet the due diligence standards expected in large-scale infrastructure projects, potentially leading to unforeseen complications and regulatory scrutiny. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the project's objectives and the applicable regulatory landscape. This involves conducting a comprehensive analysis of current operations, identifying areas for improvement, and then developing and evaluating potential solutions against criteria that include efficiency, safety, quality, cost-effectiveness, and regulatory compliance. Stakeholder engagement and rigorous risk assessment are crucial steps before any significant changes are implemented. The decision-making process should be transparent, documented, and subject to appropriate oversight to ensure accountability and adherence to best practices. Question 4. Which approach would be most effective in ensuring a major railway construction project aligns with China Railway Construction's long-term strategic objectives and national development priorities, while also managing immediate project demands? Option A. Delegating all strategic alignment decisions to the project site managers, assuming they possess the necessary foresight to interpret and implement national directives independently. Option B. Focusing primarily on minimizing immediate project costs and accelerating construction timelines to maximize short-term profitability and demonstrate project efficiency. Option C. Proactively engaging with national planning agencies and internal strategy departments to integrate project milestones with broader economic and social development goals, and regularly assessing project progress against these integrated objectives. Option D. Prioritizing the adoption of the cheapest available materials and labor to ensure the project remains within budget, even if it means compromising on certain quality or technological standards. The correct answer is C. Proactively engaging with national planning agencies and internal strategy departments to integrate project milestones with broader economic and social development goals, and regularly assessing project progress against these integrated objectives. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in large infrastructure projects like those undertaken by China Railway Construction, managing diverse stakeholder expectations and ensuring project alignment with national strategic goals. The professional challenge lies in balancing the immediate operational needs of the project with the broader, long-term objectives mandated by the state and the company's strategic vision. This requires a nuanced understanding of how individual project decisions contribute to or detract from overarching national development plans and the company's competitive positioning. Careful judgment is required to prioritize actions that yield the greatest strategic benefit, even if they involve short-term trade-offs. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive, forward-looking assessment that aligns project execution with the China Railway Construction's strategic directives and national development priorities. This involves proactive engagement with relevant government bodies and internal strategic planning departments to ensure the project's objectives are integrated with broader economic and social goals. This proactive alignment is crucial for securing ongoing support, navigating regulatory landscapes, and ultimately contributing to the company's long-term success and its role in national infrastructure development. As implicitly guided by the principles of state-led economic planning and development prevalent in China, an incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate cost reduction without considering its impact on long-term project sustainability or strategic alignment would fail to meet the implicit regulatory and ethical expectations of a state-owned enterprise. Such an approach could lead to suboptimal resource allocation, missed opportunities for technological advancement, or even non-compliance with national industrial policies. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes short-term revenue generation by cutting corners on quality or safety would violate fundamental ethical principles and potentially contravene specific regulations governing construction standards and worker welfare, leading to reputational damage and legal repercussions. An approach that neglects stakeholder engagement, particularly with government agencies responsible for oversight and strategic planning, risks project delays, funding issues, and a failure to adapt to evolving national priorities. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the project's mandate within the broader context of China Railway Construction's strategic objectives and national development plans. This involves continuous environmental scanning to identify relevant policy shifts, technological advancements, and market trends. When faced with choices, professionals should evaluate each option not only on its immediate financial impact, but also on its contribution to strategic goals, its alignment with regulatory requirements, and its ethical implications. A structured risk assessment, considering both operational and strategic risks, should inform the final decision, ensuring that choices are robust, sustainable, and in line with the company's overarching mission. Question 5. The review process indicates a potential conflict of interest in a significant construction material procurement tender where a senior manager's sibling is a principal owner of one of the bidding companies. The senior manager is part of the evaluation committee, What is the most appropriate course of action for the senior manager? Option A. Proceed with the evaluation, but ensure the bid from the relative's company is scrutinized more rigorously to demonstrate impartiality. Option B. Inform the relative about the evaluation process and offer guidance on how to strengthen their bid to ensure competitiveness. Option C. Immediately disclose the familial relationship to the designated ethics committee or superior and recuse themselves from all aspects of the tender evaluation process. Option D. Continue with the evaluation as usual, assuming personal objectivity will prevail and no undue influence will be exerted. The correct answer is C. Immediately disclose the familial relationship to the designated ethics committee or superior and recuse themselves from all aspects of the tender evaluation process. Explanation: the review process indicates a potential conflict of interest arising from a senior manager's involvement in a procurement decision where their close relative is a bidder. This scenario is professionally challenging because it directly tests the integrity of the procurement process and the commitment to fair competition, core principles within China Railway Construction's operational framework, and relevant Chinese regulations governing state-owned enterprises and public procurement. Maintaining impartiality and transparency is paramount to prevent favoritism, ensure value for money, and uphold the company's reputation. The correct approach is to immediately disclose the relationship to the relevant oversight committee or superior, recuse oneself from any decision-making related to the bid, and ensure that the procurement process continues with an independent evaluation. This aligns with the principles of good corporate governance and the spirit of regulations designed to prevent corruption and ensure fair dealing in state-owned enterprises. It demonstrates a commitment to ethical conduct, transparency, and adherence to internal policies and national laws that mandate impartiality in business dealings. An incorrect approach of proceeding with the evaluation without disclosure risks violating internal company policies on conflict of interest and potentially Chinese laws that prohibit undue influence in procurement. This could lead to accusations of favoritism, a compromised decision, and severe reputational damage, as well as legal repercussions for the individual and the company. Another incorrect approach of attempting to subtly influence the evaluation in favor of the relative, even if not explicitly stated, is a direct breach of ethical conduct and regulatory requirements for fair competition. It undermines the integrity of the entire procurement process and constitutes a serious ethical and legal failing. A third incorrect approach of ignoring the situation and hoping it goes unnoticed is negligent and demonstrates a lack of professional responsibility and awareness of the company's ethical and legal obligations. This inaction allows a potential conflict to fester, increasing the risk of discovery and subsequent severe consequences. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical considerations and regulatory compliance. This involves proactively identifying potential conflicts of interest, understanding the company's policies and relevant laws, and taking decisive action to mitigate risks. When a conflict arises, immediate disclosure, recusal from decision-making, and adherence to established procedures for independent review are the hallmarks of professional integrity and responsible conduct. Question 6. The analysis reveals that a new safety training program has been implemented across multiple China railway construction sites. To assess its effectiveness, what is the most appropriate evaluation methodology to ensure a comprehensive and accurate understanding of its impact on accident reduction and overall safety culture? Option A. A sole reliance on the total number of reported accidents at each site before and after the training period. Option B. A comparative analysis of accident frequency and severity rates across sites, supplemented by worker surveys on perceived safety knowledge, supervisor observations of compliance, and an examination of near-miss reporting trends. Option C. An exclusive focus on qualitative feedback from workers regarding their satisfaction with the training content and delivery. Option D. A direct comparison of accident rates between sites with differing project complexities and workforce experience levels, without adjusting for these variables. The correct answer is B. A comparative analysis of accident frequency and severity rates across sites, supplemented by worker surveys on perceived safety knowledge, supervisor observations of compliance, and an examination of near-miss reporting trends. Explanation: The analysis reveals a scenario where a project manager at China Railway Construction is tasked with evaluating the effectiveness of a new safety training program implemented across several construction sites. The challenge lies in objectively assessing the program's impact on reducing on-site accidents, considering the inherent variability in site conditions, worker experience, and reporting accuracy. A purely quantitative approach, focusing solely on accident statistics, might overlook qualitative improvements in safety culture or near-miss reporting, which are crucial indicators of long-term safety enhancement. The correct approach involves a multifaceted evaluation that combines quantitative data with qualitative feedback. This aligns with best practices in project management and safety assessment, emphasizing a holistic understanding of program effectiveness. Specifically, it would involve analyzing accident rates, both frequency and severity, before and after the training, alongside worker surveys on perceived safety knowledge and confidence, supervisor observations of safety compliance, and analysis of near-miss reporting trends. This comprehensive method provides a more accurate and nuanced picture of the training's success, allowing for targeted improvements and demonstrating accountability to stakeholders. It reflects a commitment to continuous improvement and adherence to China's stringent safety regulations for infrastructure projects, which often mandate robust safety management systems and performance monitoring. An incorrect approach would be to solely rely on the number of reported accidents. This fails to account for underreporting of minor incidents or near misses, which are vital learning opportunities. It also neglects the qualitative aspects of safety culture, such as worker awareness and proactive hazard identification, which are not always captured by raw accident data. Such an approach could lead to a false sense of security or an overestimation of the training's impact, potentially violating the spirit of safety regulations that aim for a proactive and comprehensive safety environment. Another incorrect approach would be to focus exclusively on worker feedback without correlating it with actual safety outcomes. While worker perception is important, it can be subjective and influenced by factors unrelated to the training's direct impact on accident prevention. This could lead to misallocation of resources or a failure to identify systemic issues that the training may not have adequately addressed. A third incorrect approach would be to compare accident rates between sites without accounting for significant differences in project complexity, environmental conditions, or the experience levels of the workforce at those sites. This would lead to an unfair and potentially misleading comparison, failing to isolate the true impact of the training program itself. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes data triangulation and a balanced assessment of both quantitative and qualitative indicators. This involves clearly defining the objectives of the evaluation, selecting appropriate metrics that capture different facets of safety performance, and ensuring that data collection methods are robust and reliable. When faced with complex evaluation scenarios, professionals should consult relevant industry standards and regulatory guidelines to ensure their methodology is sound and defensible. Question 7. The assessment process reveals that a key component for an upcoming high-speed rail project has been identified by a project manager who has a strong existing relationship with a particular supplier. This supplier has presented a preliminary solution that appears to meet the project's immediate needs, and the project manager is advocating for its immediate adoption to expedite the project timeline. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure compliance with China Railway Construction's procurement framework and national regulations? Option A. Negotiate a contract with the supplier based on their initial proposal, but only after informally confirming that no other supplier can offer a significantly better deal to ensure some level of due diligence. Option B. Directly award the contract to the supplier recommended by the project manager, given their existing relationship and the apparent suitability of their initial solution, to accelerate project delivery. Option C. Initiate a formal competitive bidding process, inviting proposals from multiple qualified suppliers, and conduct a comprehensive evaluation based on predefined technical, financial, and compliance criteria before awarding the contract. Option D. Proceed with the preferred supplier without a formal evaluation, relying on the project manager's assurance of their capabilities, and finalize a contract based on their initial proposal to save time. The correct answer is C. Initiate a formal competitive bidding process, inviting proposals from multiple qualified suppliers, and conduct a comprehensive evaluation based on predefined technical, financial, and compliance criteria before awarding the contract. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing the need for timely project execution with the imperative of adhering to China Railway Construction's internal procurement policies and relevant national regulations governing public infrastructure projects. The pressure to expedite the process, coupled with the potential for a preferred supplier to offer a seemingly advantageous solution, creates a risk of bypassing established due diligence procedures. This can lead to suboptimal outcomes, increased financial risk, and potential violations of procurement integrity. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a structured and transparent procurement process that aligns with China Railway Construction's internal guidelines and national regulations. This involves a thorough evaluation of multiple qualified suppliers, a clear and objective assessment of their proposals against defined criteria, and a formal contract negotiation. This method ensures fair competition, promotes cost-effectiveness, and mitigates risks associated with single sourcing or preferential treatment, thereby upholding principles of good governance and responsible project management as mandated by Chinese procurement laws and company policy. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves directly awarding the contract to the supplier who initially presented the solution. This bypasses the competitive bidding process, which is a fundamental requirement of Chinese procurement regulations for state-owned enterprises and public projects. It creates an unfair playing field, potentially excludes more suitable or cost-effective suppliers, and opens the door to allegations of favoritism or corruption. Another incorrect approach is to proceed with the preferred supplier without a formal, documented evaluation of their technical and financial capabilities. This neglects the due diligence expected under company policy and national oversight. It fails to establish a clear rationale for supplier selection, making it difficult to justify the decision if challenged and increasing the risk of selecting a supplier who cannot meet project demands, leading to delays and cost overruns. A third incorrect approach is to negotiate a contract based solely on the initial proposal without seeking competitive bids or exploring alternative solutions. This limits the organization's leverage in negotiations and may result in paying a premium for services or materials. It also fails to demonstrate that the best value for money has been achieved, a key principle in public procurement. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such situations should first consult and strictly adhere to China Railway Construction's procurement policies and relevant national laws. The decision-making process should prioritize transparency, fairness, and accountability. This involves clearly defining project requirements, identifying a pool of qualified potential suppliers, issuing a formal request for proposals, establishing objective evaluation criteria, conducting a thorough and documented assessment of all submissions, and engaging in fair negotiation with the selected supplier. Any deviation from this structured process should be rigorously justified and documented, with appropriate approvals obtained. Question 8. The performance metrics show a consistent trend of exceeding permissible limits for certain wastewater discharge parameters on a major railway construction project in a sensitive ecological zone. While project timelines are being met and the budget remains within projections, these environmental indicators are a cause for concern. What is the most appropriate course of action for the project management team to address this situation? Option A. Continue with the project as planned, focusing on meeting deadlines and budget, and consider minor adjustments to wastewater treatment processes only if explicitly mandated by regulatory authorities. Option B. Reclassify the wastewater discharge data to align with acceptable thresholds, citing unforeseen geological conditions as the primary reason for the initial discrepancies. Option C. Immediately halt all construction activities until a complete overhaul of the wastewater management system can be implemented, regardless of project schedule and budget implications. Option D. Initiate a comprehensive investigation into the root causes of the wastewater discharge exceedances, involving environmental specialists, and develop a targeted remediation plan in compliance with China's environmental protection laws and regulations. The correct answer is D. Initiate a comprehensive investigation into the root causes of the wastewater discharge exceedances, involving environmental specialists, and develop a targeted remediation plan in compliance with China's environmental protection laws and regulations. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in large-scale infrastructure projects like those undertaken by China Railway Construction. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for project completion and cost control with the long-term implications of environmental sustainability and regulatory compliance. The performance metrics, while indicating progress, also highlight potential deviations from environmental standards. This creates a tension between operational efficiency and adherence to the stringent environmental protection laws and regulations governing construction projects in China. Professionals must exercise careful judgment to avoid compromising either aspect, as both are critical for the company's reputation, legal standing, and long-term viability. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a proactive and systematic investigation into the root causes of the environmental metric deviations. This aligns with China's robust environmental protection framework, which emphasizes prevention, mitigation, and accountability. Specifically, it adheres to the principles outlined in the Environmental Protection Law of the People's Republic of China and relevant industry-specific regulations for construction. This approach demonstrates best professional practice by prioritizing 1. Regulatory compliance, directly addressing potential breaches of environmental laws and standards. 2. Risk management, identifying and mitigating environmental risks before they escalate into significant penalties or project delays. 3. Sustainable development, upholding the company's commitment to environmentally responsible construction practices, a key tenet of China's national development strategy. 4. Data integrity, ensuring that performance metrics accurately reflect actual environmental impact and are not misleading. By initiating a thorough investigation, the company signals its commitment to transparency and its willingness to rectify any shortcomings, thereby safeguarding its operational license and public image. Incorrect approaches analysis, ignoring the environmental metric deviations and focusing solely on project completion, timelines, and budget, is a direct violation of China's environmental laws. This approach demonstrates a severe lack of professional responsibility and ethical conduct. It risks significant legal penalties, including fines, project suspension, and even criminal liability for responsible individuals. Furthermore, it undermines the principles of sustainable development, which are increasingly prioritized by the Chinese government and society. Attributing the deviations to external, uncontrollable factors without thorough investigation is also professionally unacceptable. While external factors can influence project performance, a responsible approach requires diligent analysis to confirm their impact and explore mitigation strategies. This approach can be seen as an attempt to evade accountability and may lead to continued noncompliance if the underlying issues are not addressed. It fails to uphold the duty of care expected of professionals in managing environmental impacts. Implementing superficial corrective actions without understanding the root cause is another flawed approach. This can lead to a false sense of compliance while the actual environmental problems persist. It is a form of regulatory noncompliance, as it does not genuinely address the issues identified by the performance metrics. This approach lacks the rigor and due diligence required by environmental regulations and can result in recurring problems and a loss of credibility. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this context should adopt a structured decision-making process that prioritizes regulatory adherence and ethical conduct. This involves 1. Recognizing and acknowledging all performance data, especially deviations from established standards. 2. Consulting relevant Chinese environmental laws, regulations, and industry best practices. 3. Initiating a comprehensive root cause analysis for any identified discrepancies. 4. Developing and implementing targeted, effective corrective actions based on the analysis. 5. Establishing robust monitoring and reporting mechanisms to ensure sustained compliance. 6. Seeking expert advice when necessary to navigate complex environmental challenges. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with both legal requirements and professional ethics. Question 9. During the evaluation of a new high-speed rail line construction project in a sensitive ecological zone, the project manager notes that the comprehensive environmental impact assessment report is still undergoing final review by the relevant national authorities, but preliminary findings suggest it will be approved. The project team is eager to begin site preparation and initial groundwork to meet an aggressive construction schedule. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure compliance with China railway construction hiring assessment test guidelines and relevant regulations? Option A. Proceed with site preparation and initial groundwork in areas deemed to have minimal environmental impact based on the preliminary assessment while awaiting the final report. Option B. Begin site preparation and initial groundwork, assuming the preliminary findings will translate into a full approval, and address any potential issues that arise during the construction phase. Option C. Commence construction activities, relying on verbal assurances from local environmental officials that the full report will be approved shortly. Option D. Halt all site preparation and initial groundwork until the official environmental impact assessment report is formally approved and all necessary permits are secured in writing. The correct answer is D. Halt all site preparation and initial groundwork until the official environmental impact assessment report is formally approved and all necessary permits are secured in writing. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing the immediate need for project progress with the long-term implications of regulatory compliance and ethical conduct within the context of China railway construction's operations. The pressure to meet deadlines, a common occurrence in large-scale infrastructure projects, can tempt individuals to overlook or downplay potential compliance issues. The professional challenge lies in identifying and addressing these issues proactively, even when it might cause delays or require additional resources, to prevent more significant repercussions later. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a thorough review of all project documentation against the China railway construction's internal policies and relevant national regulations concerning environmental impact assessments. This aligns with the principle of due diligence and the legal requirement to obtain all necessary permits and approvals before commencing construction activities. Adhering to these established procedures ensures that the project is not only legally compliant, but also environmentally responsible, mitigating risks of fines, project suspension, and reputational damage. This proactive stance is a cornerstone of ethical project management and robust corporate governance. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with construction based on a preliminary environmental assessment, assuming that the full report will be approved later. This is a direct violation of regulatory frameworks that mandate the completion and approval of environmental impact assessments prior to the commencement of construction. It exposes the project to significant legal risks, including potential injunctions, substantial fines, and mandatory remediation efforts, all of which can severely disrupt project timelines and escalate costs far beyond what an initial delay would have incurred. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for environmental protection and public interest. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on verbal assurances from local authorities that the environmental permit will be granted without obtaining written confirmation and the official document. Verbal assurances lack legal standing and do not constitute proof of compliance. This approach is professionally negligent and ethically unsound, as it prioritizes expediency over verifiable regulatory adherence. The absence of a formal permit can lead to project stoppage, legal challenges, and accusations of operating without due process, damaging the company's credibility and potentially leading to severe penalties. A third incorrect approach is to proceed with construction in areas deemed low risk by the project manager, without a formal environmental impact assessment for those specific zones. The definition of low risk can be subjective and may not align with the stringent requirements of environmental regulations. This bypasses the systematic evaluation process designed to identify and mitigate potential environmental harm, regardless of perceived risk levels. It is a failure to uphold the comprehensive nature of environmental protection laws and demonstrates a lack of commitment to thorough due diligence, risking unforeseen environmental damage and subsequent regulatory action. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a systematic approach to project initiation and execution. This involves 1. Clearly understanding all applicable regulatory requirements and internal company policies. 2. Conducting thorough due diligence at every stage, ensuring all necessary documentation and approvals are obtained in writing. 3. Prioritizing compliance and ethical conduct over short-term gains or pressures to accelerate timelines. 4. establishing clear communication channels with regulatory bodies and maintaining transparent record-keeping. 5. Implementing a robust risk management framework that includes environmental and legal compliance as critical components. When faced with potential conflicts between project timelines and compliance, professionals must escalate concerns through appropriate channels and advocate for adherence to regulations, even if it necessitates project adjustments. Question 10. Benchmark analysis indicates that China railway construction is facing challenges in effectively integrating newly mandated advanced safety protocols across its diverse and geographically dispersed project sites. Considering the operational scale and the need for seamless integration without compromising project timelines or worker productivity, which of the following implementation strategies would best align with regulatory expectations and professional best practices for such a large-scale enterprise? Option A. Focus solely on updating written documentation and policy manuals to reflect the new safety protocols, assuming that existing training structures will be sufficient for employees to understand and apply the changes. Option B. Implement the new safety protocols through a phased approach, beginning with pilot programs at selected sites to gather feedback, followed by iterative refinement and broader rollout with comprehensive training and resource allocation, ensuring continuous monitoring and adaptation. Option C. Mandate immediate, full-scale adoption of all new safety protocols across all sites simultaneously, with strict enforcement and penalties for noncompliance, without prior pilot testing or extensive site-specific consultation. Option D. Introduce the new safety protocols by issuing a directive to all project managers to adapt them as they see fit based on their immediate operational needs, without centralized oversight or standardized training. The correct answer is C. Mandate immediate full-scale adoption of all new safety protocols across all sites simultaneously, with strict enforcement and penalties for noncompliance, without prior pilot testing or extensive site-specific consultation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in implementing new safety protocols within a large, established organization like China railway construction. The core difficulty lies in balancing the imperative for enhanced safety, driven by regulatory updates and the need to prevent incidents, with the practical realities of operational disruption, employee resistance to change, and the potential for unintended consequences. The sheer scale of operations and the diverse workforce across numerous projects mean that a one-size-fits-all approach is unlikely to be effective. Furthermore, the pressure to maintain project timelines and cost efficiencies can create a conflict with the resources and time required for thorough implementation and training. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a phased, consultative, and adaptive implementation strategy. This aligns with the principles of effective change management and regulatory compliance within large enterprises. Specifically, it reflects a commitment to understanding the existing operational landscape, engaging stakeholders at all levels, and iteratively refining the protocols based on feedback and observed effectiveness. This approach is best professional practice because it minimizes disruption, fosters buy-in from employees who are directly affected by the changes, and allows for the identification and mitigation of unforeseen issues before they escalate. From a regulatory perspective, it demonstrates due diligence and a proactive commitment to meeting and exceeding safety standards, which is crucial for maintaining operational licenses and public trust. The iterative nature allows for continuous improvement, a key tenet in modern safety management systems. Incorrect approaches analysis. A purely top-down mandate without adequate consultation or pilot testing is professionally unacceptable. This approach risks alienating the workforce, leading to superficial compliance or outright resistance, and failing to address practical implementation hurdles specific to different work sites. It can be seen as a failure to adequately consider the human element of change, potentially violating ethical obligations to ensure a safe and supportive working environment. From a regulatory standpoint, while the mandate itself might stem from a regulation, the method of implementation could be challenged as not being reasonably practicable or effective in achieving the intended safety outcomes. Implementing protocols without sufficient training or resource allocation is also professionally flawed. This creates a situation where employees are expected to adhere to new standards they do not fully understand or cannot practically implement due to a lack of necessary tools, equipment, or time. This is a direct ethical failure, as it places workers at increased risk by imposing requirements without providing the means to meet them. It also represents a potential regulatory violation, as the spirit of safety regulations is to ensure a safe working environment, not just to create a set of rules. Focusing solely on immediate compliance without considering long-term integration and continuous improvement is short-sighted. While immediate adherence is important, a failure to embed the new protocols into the organizational culture and operational workflows means that safety standards may regress once initial scrutiny is reduced. This approach lacks foresight and can lead to a cyclical pattern of implementing and then losing safety gains, which is inefficient and ultimately detrimental to the organization's safety record and reputation. It may also fall short of the proactive and continuous improvement expectations often embedded in modern regulatory frameworks. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this context must adopt a structured and adaptive approach to implementing new safety protocols. This involves 1. Understanding the regulatory drivers and the specific safety objectives. 2. Conducting a thorough impact assessment on current operations, personnel, and resources. 3. Engaging key stakeholders, including frontline workers, supervisors, and management, to gather input and build consensus. 4. Developing a phased implementation plan, potentially including pilot programs in controlled environments. 5. Providing comprehensive training and ensuring adequate resources are available. 6. Establishing clear communication channels for feedback and issue reporting. 7. Monitoring the effectiveness of the protocols, collecting data, and making necessary adjustments. 8. Integrating the new protocols into standard operating procedures and ongoing training programs to ensure long-term adherence and continuous improvement. This systematic process ensures that safety improvements are not only mandated, but also effectively and sustainably integrated into the organization's culture and operations, thereby fulfilling both regulatory requirements and ethical responsibilities. Question 11. Operational review demonstrates a recurring pattern of minor safety incidents and budget overruns on multiple recent infrastructure projects, often attributed to unforeseen site conditions and inadequate subcontractor vetting. While project completion timelines are generally met, the cumulative impact of these issues is significant. What is the most effective approach for China Railway Construction to address this situation and enhance its long-term project execution capabilities? Option A. Implement a comprehensive review of the existing risk management framework, focusing on identifying systemic weaknesses in hazard identification, site assessment protocols, and subcontractor due diligence processes, and then develop and implement revised procedures and training programs. Option B. Engage an external risk management consultancy to conduct a one-off assessment and provide a report, with minimal internal involvement in the review or implementation process. Option C. Expedite the current project schedules by reallocating resources to overcome immediate challenges, deferring a detailed analysis of the recurring incidents until after project completion. Option D. Introduce a standardized, simplified checklist for site inspections and subcontractor onboarding to ensure basic compliance across all projects. The correct answer is A. Implement a comprehensive review of the existing risk management framework, focusing on identifying systemic weaknesses in hazard identification, site assessment protocols, and subcontractor due diligence processes, and then develop and implement revised procedures and training programs. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing the immediate need for project progress with the long-term implications of inadequate risk mitigation. The pressure to meet deadlines, a common occurrence in large-scale infrastructure projects like those undertaken by China Railway Construction, can lead to shortcuts. The professional challenge lies in identifying and addressing systemic weaknesses in risk management processes that could lead to significant financial, reputational, and safety consequences. Even if immediate project delivery is achieved, adherence to the China Railway Construction's internal guidelines and relevant national regulations concerning project management and safety is paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a proactive and systematic review of the risk management framework. This aligns with the principles of robust corporate governance and operational excellence expected within China Railway Construction. It emphasizes identifying root causes of recurring issues, rather than just addressing immediate symptoms. This approach demonstrates a commitment to continuous improvement, ensuring that future projects benefit from lessons learned. It also reflects a responsible approach to resource allocation, recognizing that investing in effective risk management upfront can prevent far greater costs and disruptions later. This is consistent with the spirit of national regulations, promoting high standards in construction and project execution. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach focuses solely on expediting the current project without addressing the underlying systemic issues. This fails to meet the professional obligation to ensure long-term project viability and safety. It represents a short-sighted perspective that prioritizes immediate output over sustainable operational integrity, potentially violating internal policies on risk assessment and mitigation. Another incorrect approach involves delegating the entire risk review to an external consultant without establishing clear internal oversight or ensuring the consultant's recommendations are integrated into the company's operational fabric. This can lead to a disconnect between external advice and internal implementation, failing to foster internal capacity for risk management and potentially overlooking project-specific nuances that only internal teams fully grasp. It also risks noncompliance if the consultant's scope does not fully encompass all relevant national and company-specific regulatory requirements. A third incorrect approach, which is to implement a superficial checklist-based review, fails to capture the complexity and interconnectedness of risks in large construction projects. Such an approach often misses subtle but critical vulnerabilities and does not foster a culture of proactive risk identification and management. It is a procedural compliance measure that lacks genuine substance and fails to address the spirit of risk mitigation, potentially leading to a false sense of security. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this context must adopt a framework that prioritizes thoroughness, systemic analysis, and continuous improvement. This involves 1. Understanding the specific regulatory landscape governing China Railway Construction's operations, including national standards for construction project management and risk assessment. 2. Conducting a comprehensive review that goes beyond superficial checks to identify root causes of recurring issues. 3. Ensuring that findings are translated into actionable improvements within the company's risk management framework and operational procedures. 4. Fostering a culture where risk identification and mitigation are integral to every stage of a project, not an afterthought. 5. Establishing clear lines of accountability for risk management and ensuring adequate resources are allocated to address identified weaknesses. Question 12. Regulatory review indicates that a critical piece of specialized equipment for an ongoing China railway construction project is experiencing significant supply chain delays from its original vendor. The project timeline is under severe pressure, and the project manager has identified an alternative supplier with the required specifications who can deliver the equipment much faster. However, engaging this new supplier would bypass the standard competitive bidding process outlined in China Railway Construction's internal procurement guidelines and relevant national regulations for state-owned enterprises. What is the most appropriate course of action for the project manager to ensure compliance and project success? Option A. Proceed with a verbal agreement with the alternative supplier to reserve the equipment, with the intention of formalizing the contract once the immediate delivery pressure has subsided. Option B. Immediately engage the alternative supplier to secure the equipment and expedite the project, documenting the decision internally as a necessary measure due to supply chain issues. Option C. Initiate a formal, expedited procurement process with the alternative supplier, seeking necessary approvals and waivers from the procurement department and relevant authorities, while exploring all options to mitigate the impact of the original vendor's delay. Option D. Inform the original vendor of the project's urgency and request a revised, accelerated delivery schedule, even if it means accepting a higher price, to avoid deviating from the established procurement process. The correct answer is B. Immediately engage the alternative supplier to secure the equipment and expedite the project, documenting the decision internally as a necessary measure due to supply chain issues. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing the need for rapid project advancement with the imperative of adhering to China Railway Construction's internal procurement policies and relevant national regulations governing state-owned enterprise procurement. The pressure to expedite the acquisition of specialized equipment, coupled with potential supply chain disruptions, can tempt project managers to bypass standard procedures, risking non-compliance, increased costs, and potential project delays due to regulatory scrutiny or disputes. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the existing framework agreements and a proactive engagement with the procurement department to explore expedited approval pathways within the established regulatory bounds. This demonstrates best professional practice by prioritizing compliance with China Railway Construction's internal procurement policies, which are designed to ensure fair competition, transparency, and value for money. Aligning with national regulations for state-owned enterprises. It also upholds ethical standards by avoiding shortcuts that could compromise integrity. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to proceed with the direct purchase from a new supplier without adhering to the established procurement process. This fails to comply with China Railway Construction's internal procurement regulations, which likely mandate competitive bidding or specific approval processes for significant expenditures, especially for specialized equipment. It also risks violating national laws governing public procurement, potentially leading to penalties, project invalidation, and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach is to delay the project significantly by insisting on a full, standard bidding process for a minor component, even when a suitable option is readily available through an existing, pre-qualified supplier. While adherence to process is crucial, excessive rigidity in minor matters can be counterproductive and may not align with the spirit of efficiency expected in project execution. This approach might also overlook opportunities to leverage existing relationships and contractual terms that could expedite delivery without compromising compliance. A third incorrect approach is to seek an informal verbal agreement with the preferred supplier to secure the equipment. This is a severe regulatory and ethical failure. Verbal agreements lack the necessary documentation for audit trails, transparency, and legal enforceability, directly contravening procurement regulations that require written contracts and formal approvals. It opens the door to disputes, price manipulation, and potential corruption, undermining the principles of good governance. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should first understand the specific regulatory framework governing procurement for China Railway Construction, including any relevant national laws and internal policies. They should then assess the urgency and the potential impact of delays. The decision-making process should involve consulting with the procurement department to identify compliant, expedited options, such as leveraging existing framework agreements or seeking waivers with proper justification. If a deviation from standard procedure is necessary, it must be formally documented, justified, and approved by the appropriate authorities, ensuring transparency and accountability throughout the process. Question 13. Operational review demonstrates that a critical section of a new high-speed rail line is experiencing significant schedule delays, primarily due to unforeseen geological challenges and a shortage of specialized construction equipment. The project manager is pushing for expedited workarounds to meet the original completion date, suggesting the use of alternative, less rigorously tested materials for certain structural components and a reduction in the frequency of independent quality inspections. Which of the following actions best addresses this situation in accordance with China Railway Construction's commitment to safety and regulatory compliance? Option A. Instruct the project manager to document the proposed workarounds and material substitution, and to proceed with them if they are deemed to offer a marginal improvement in cost-effectiveness, with a note to conduct a post-completion review. Option B. Immediately halt work on the affected section to conduct a thorough reassessment of the geological challenges and secure the necessary specialized equipment, while simultaneously initiating a review of alternative, approved materials and scheduling additional, comprehensive quality inspections. Option C. Authorize the project manager to proceed with the proposed workarounds, emphasizing the importance of meeting the deadline and instructing the quality assurance team to focus only on the most critical structural elements. Option D. Delegate the decision-making authority for material substitutions and inspection frequency to the site engineers, trusting their on-the-ground assessment to balance speed and quality. The correct answer is B. Immediately halt work on the affected section to conduct a thorough reassessment of the geological challenges and secure the necessary specialized equipment, while simultaneously initiating a review of alternative, approved materials and scheduling additional, comprehensive quality inspections. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing project timelines with the need for rigorous quality control and adherence to safety standards, particularly within the context of China Railway Construction's operational environment. The pressure to meet deadlines can lead to shortcuts, which directly contravene the stringent safety and quality regulations governing railway construction in China. The professional challenge lies in identifying and mitigating risks associated with accelerated construction without compromising the integrity and safety of the infrastructure. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a proactive and systematic review of the project's progress against established quality and safety protocols. This involves engaging with site engineers and quality assurance personnel to identify potential deviations and implement corrective actions before they escalate into critical issues. This aligns with the principles of responsible project management and the regulatory framework for railway construction in China, which mandates strict adherence to technical specifications, safety procedures, and quality assurance measures throughout the project lifecycle. It reflects a commitment to long-term operational safety and reliability, which is paramount in public infrastructure projects. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves solely relying on the project manager's assurance without independent verification. This fails to acknowledge the inherent risks of overlooking critical details under time pressure and violates the principle of due diligence required by regulatory oversight bodies. It can lead to the undetected compromise of safety standards, a direct contravention of China's railway safety regulations. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize immediate cost savings by deferring necessary quality checks. This is ethically unsound and legally problematic, as it potentially jeopardizes the structural integrity and operational safety of the railway. Chinese regulations for infrastructure projects explicitly prohibit such compromises, as they can have severe consequences for public safety and lead to significant liabilities. A third incorrect approach is to dismiss concerns raised by site personnel without thorough investigation. This demonstrates a lack of respect for the expertise of those on the ground and can lead to the suppression of vital information regarding potential safety hazards or quality defects. Such an attitude is contrary to the collaborative and transparent approach encouraged by best practices in project management and regulatory compliance in China. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should adopt a risk-based approach. This involves understanding the potential impacts of schedule pressures on quality and safety, identifying critical control points, and establishing clear communication channels for reporting and addressing issues. When faced with potential conflicts between speed and quality/safety, the decision-making process must prioritize adherence to regulatory requirements and ethical obligations. This involves seeking expert advice, documenting all decisions and their justifications, and escalating concerns through appropriate channels if necessary to ensure compliance with China Railway Construction's internal policies and national regulations. Question 14. The assessment process reveals that a critical phase of the China Railway Construction project is behind schedule, and there is significant pressure from senior management to accelerate progress. The project team is considering bypassing a detailed, site-specific risk assessment for the upcoming construction phase, arguing that similar projects have been completed successfully without encountering major issues. They propose to rely on general risk mitigation strategies previously employed. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework and best professional practices for China railway construction? Option A. Delegate the entire risk assessment process to a junior engineer to expedite the task, assuming they will identify the most critical risks. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive, site-specific risk assessment for the upcoming phase, documenting all identified risks and developing tailored mitigation plans, even if it causes a slight delay to the immediate schedule. Option C. Focus solely on addressing immediate safety concerns during construction, deferring any broader risk assessment until after the critical phase is completed. Option D. Proceed with the construction phase immediately, implementing only general risk mitigation strategies based on past project experience to meet the urgent deadline. The correct answer is D. Proceed with the construction phase immediately, implementing only general risk mitigation strategies based on past project experience to meet the urgent deadline. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing the immediate need for project progress with the long-term implications of inadequate risk assessment, particularly within the context of China Railway Construction's operational environment. The pressure to meet deadlines is a common challenge in large-scale infrastructure projects, but overlooking critical risk mitigation steps can lead to significant financial, reputational, and safety consequences, which are heavily scrutinized under Chinese regulations governing construction projects. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a thorough and documented risk assessment process before proceeding with the implementation phase. This aligns with the principles of project management and regulatory compliance mandated by Chinese construction laws and industry guidelines. Specifically, it reflects the requirement for proactive risk identification, evaluation, and the development of mitigation strategies. This approach ensures that potential issues are addressed systematically, minimizing the likelihood of unforeseen problems that could derail the project, incur additional costs, or compromise safety standards. It demonstrates due diligence and adherence to best practices in project execution. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves prioritizing speed over thoroughness in risk assessment. This directly contravenes the spirit and letter of regulation that mandate comprehensive planning and risk management. Such an approach risks overlooking critical safety hazards or environmental impacts, leading to potential violations, fines, and project delays due to unforeseen incidents. It also demonstrates a disregard for the established project lifecycle and the importance of foundational risk analysis. Another incorrect approach is to assume that past project experiences automatically cover all potential risks for the current project. Lessons learned are valuable. Each project has unique contextual factors, geological conditions, and stakeholder dynamics that can introduce novel risks. Relying solely on historical data without a specific, current assessment is a failure of due diligence and can lead to the omission of critical, project-specific risks, violating the principle of thoroughness required by regulatory frameworks. A third incorrect approach is to delegate the entire risk assessment responsibility to a junior team member without adequate oversight or expertise. This not only undermines the quality of the assessment, but also represents a failure in management responsibility. Regulations often stipulate that risk assessments should be conducted by qualified personnel and reviewed by experienced professionals, ensuring that the assessment is robust and credible. This delegation without proper supervision is a breach of professional standards and regulatory expectations for accountability. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this context should adopt a structured decision-making process that begins with understanding the project's objectives and the applicable regulatory framework. This involves actively seeking information about potential risks, consulting with subject matter experts, and documenting all findings and mitigation plans. When faced with pressure to expedite, the professional's duty is to clearly communicate the risks associated with bypassing or inadequately performing critical steps like risk assessment, and to advocate for adherence to established procedures. The decision-making process should prioritize compliance, safety, and long-term project viability over short-term expediency. Question 15. Implementation of a new high-speed rail project tender is underway, and a key contact within the client organization has subtly suggested that a gesture of goodwill, beyond the official bid submission, would significantly improve the chances of securing the contract. This contact has hinted at the possibility of receiving preferential treatment in the evaluation process if such a gesture is made, implying it would help streamline the decision. Option A. Share confidential information about a rival bidder's pricing strategy, which has been inadvertently disclosed by a junior member of the bidding team, to demonstrate the company's understanding of market dynamics. Option B. Offer a discreet consulting fee to the contact, framed as compensation for their insight into the client's needs, to be paid after the contract is awarded. Option C. Proceed with the bid as planned, but instruct the team to subtly inflate certain cost components in the proposal to offset potential future unexpected expenses related to client relations. Option D. Politely decline the suggestion, stating that all bids will be submitted strictly in accordance with the official tender requirements, and that the company adheres to a strict policy of fair and transparent dealings. The correct answer is D. Politely decline the suggestion, stating that all bids will be submitted strictly in accordance with the official tender requirements, and that the company adheres to a strict policy of fair and transparent dealings. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a conflict between the immediate financial benefit to the company and the long-term integrity of its operations and reputation. The pressure to secure a contract, especially in a competitive environment like the railway construction sector, can lead individuals to overlook or rationalize ethically questionable practices. The challenge lies in balancing business objectives with adherence to ethical standards and regulatory compliance, particularly when personal or team performance is tied to contract acquisition. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes transparency, adherence to established procurement procedures, and ethical conduct. This aligns with the principles of fair competition and anti-corruption, which are fundamental to maintaining a reputable business and ensuring sustainable growth. By refusing to offer preferential treatment or undisclosed benefits, the individual upholds the company's commitment to ethical business practices and avoids potential legal repercussions and reputational damage. This approach demonstrates integrity and a long-term perspective, recognizing that short-term gains achieved through unethical means are unsustainable and ultimately detrimental. Incorrect approach is analysis. Offering a facilitation fee that is not part of the official bidding process constitutes bribery or undue influence, violating anti-corruption laws and ethical codes of conduct. This action undermines fair competition and creates a precedent for future unethical demands. Providing proprietary information about a competitor's bid to the client is a breach of confidentiality and fair play. It distorts the bidding process, giving an unfair advantage and potentially leading to legal challenges from other bidders. Ignoring the request and proceeding with the bid without addressing the ethical concern leaves the company vulnerable. It signals a lack of vigilance and could be interpreted as tacit acceptance of unethical practices if the situation is not proactively managed. Professional reasoning. Professionals in the China railway construction sector must adopt a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the ethical and regulatory implications of any request. This involves understanding the company's code of conduct, relevant anti-corruption laws, and procurement regulations. When faced with pressure to engage in unethical practices, the professional should first seek to understand the request fully and its potential consequences. They should then consult internal policies and, if necessary, seek guidance from their compliance department or legal counsel. The decision should always err on the side of caution, prioritizing ethical conduct and legal compliance over short-term business gains. Maintaining detailed records of all communications and decisions is also crucial for accountability. Question 16. The audit findings indicate that a project manager at China Railway Construction has requested the deferral of revenue recognition for a recently completed project phase, citing a desire to improve the current quarter's project performance metrics. The project phase meets all the contractual criteria for revenue recognition according to the company's established policies and relevant accounting standards. As the auditor, what is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Agree to defer revenue recognition as requested by the project manager to support the project's short-term performance metrics, with a note in the working papers that this was a management request. Option B. Accept the project manager's assessment of project progress and defer revenue recognition until the next reporting period to avoid potential conflict. Option C. Insist on immediate recognition of revenue for the completed project phase in accordance with company policy and accounting standards, and document the project manager's request and the rationale for adherence to policy. Option D. Recommend a compromise by recognizing a portion of the revenue now and deferring the remainder, based on the project manager's subjective assessment of future performance. The correct answer is C. Insist on immediate recognition of revenue for the completed project phase in accordance with company policy and accounting standards, and document the project manager's request and the rationale for adherence to policy. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the conflict between immediate project pressures and the long-term integrity of financial reporting. The auditor is tasked with ensuring compliance with China Railway Construction's internal policies and relevant accounting standards, which mandate accurate and timely recognition of revenue. The temptation to defer recognition, while seemingly beneficial for short-term project performance metrics, directly contravenes these principles and could mislead stakeholders. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to the established revenue recognition policies and accounting standards. This means recognizing revenue when the criteria for completion and transfer of control are met, regardless of project completion percentages or internal performance targets. This upholds the principle of prudence and ensures financial statements present a true and fair view, aligning with the ethical duty of an auditor to maintain objectivity and integrity. It also prevents potential misrepresentation of financial performance, which could have serious consequences for the company and its investors. An incorrect approach would be to defer revenue recognition based on the project manager's request to improve short-term performance metrics. This action violates the fundamental accounting principle of accrual accounting and the specific revenue recognition policies of China Railway Construction, constitutes a misstatement of financial results, potentially leading to regulatory sanctions and loss of investor confidence. Another incorrect approach would be to accept the project manager's assertion without independent verification of the project's progress and revenue-earning milestones. This demonstrates a lack of professional skepticism and due diligence, failing to uphold the auditor's responsibility to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence. A third incorrect approach would be to prioritize the relationship with the project manager over professional judgment and ethical obligations. This compromises objectivity and independence, which are cornerstones of the auditing profession. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that prioritizes adherence to regulations, accounting standards, and ethical codes. This involves 1. Identifying the core issue, potential misstatement of revenue. 2. Consulting relevant policies and standards, China Railway Construction's revenue recognition policy and applicable accounting standards. 3. Gathering objective evidence, independently verifying project progress and revenue milestones. 4. Exercising professional skepticism, questioning assumptions and seeking corroboration. 5. Communicating and escalating, discussing findings with the project manager and, if necessary, with senior management or the audit committee to ensure appropriate action is taken. Question 17. The control framework reveals that a junior engineer on a critical railway construction project has identified a potential structural weakness in a specific batch of concrete being used for a vital support structure. The project is under immense pressure to meet a strict deadline, and the discovery was made just before the concrete is scheduled to be poured. The engineer is concerned that if the concrete is poured, it could compromise the long-term safety of the structure, but is also aware of the significant delays and repercussions that reporting this issue might cause. What is the most ethically and professionally responsible course of action for the engineer? Option A. Proceed with the pouring of the concrete as scheduled, assuming that the quality control measures in place are sufficient and that the observed anomaly is minor. Option B. Immediately report the potential structural weakness through the established internal reporting channels, documenting all observations and concerns, and requesting an urgent review before pouring. Option C. Discuss the concern informally with senior colleagues to gauge their opinion and potentially find a solution without formally escalating it to minimize disruption. Option D. Delay reporting the issue until more definitive proof of the weakness can be obtained, to avoid causing unnecessary alarm or project delays if the concern turns out to be unfounded. The correct answer is B. Immediately report the potential structural weakness through the established internal reporting channels, documenting all observations and concerns, and requesting an urgent review before pouring. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the conflict between achieving project deadlines and upholding ethical standards regarding the disclosure of potential safety risks. The pressure to complete a critical infrastructure project on time, especially one as significant as a railway construction, can create an environment where concerns might be downplayed or overlooked. The dilemma lies in balancing the immediate demands of the project with the long-term responsibility to ensure public safety and maintain the company's integrity. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves immediately escalating the identified safety concern through the established internal reporting channels. This aligns with the principles of corporate governance and ethical conduct expected within China Railway Construction. Regulatory frameworks and internal guidelines typically mandate transparent reporting of potential risks, especially those impacting safety. By formally documenting and reporting the issue, the employee acts responsibly, allowing management to assess the situation, allocate resources for investigation, and implement necessary corrective actions before the concrete is poured. This proactive measure safeguards public safety, prevents potential future liabilities, and upholds the company's commitment to quality and safety standards, which are paramount in the construction industry. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves delaying the reporting to gather more definitive proof. This is ethically problematic because it risks allowing a potentially unsafe condition to be finalized. The delay could be interpreted as an attempt to avoid responsibility or to allow the project to proceed without addressing a known risk, which violates the duty of care. It also bypasses the established control framework designed for timely risk mitigation. Another incorrect approach is to discuss the concern informally with colleagues without formal reporting. While seemingly collaborative, this bypasses the official control framework and does not guarantee that the issue will be addressed by those with the authority to act. It can lead to a diffusion of responsibility and may not result in the necessary corrective actions, potentially leaving the safety risk unmitigated. This informal approach fails to create a documented record, which is crucial for accountability and future reference. A further incorrect approach is to ignore the concern altogether, assuming it is minor or that others will notice. This is a severe ethical and professional failure. It demonstrates a lack of diligence and a disregard for safety responsibilities. Ignoring a potential safety issue, especially in a high-stakes environment like railway construction, can have catastrophic consequences, leading to accidents, loss of life, and significant damage to the company's reputation and financial standing. It directly contravenes the fundamental ethical obligation to act with integrity and to prioritize safety. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such dilemmas should first identify the core ethical principles at play: honesty, integrity, responsibility, and the duty to protect public safety. They should then consult the relevant internal policies and procedures of China Railway Construction regarding risk reporting and safety protocols. The decision-making process should prioritize the safety of the public and the integrity of the project. Escalating the issue through the proper channels, documenting all communications, and seeking guidance from supervisors or ethics officers are crucial steps. If internal channels prove unresponsive or inadequate, professionals may need to consider further steps as outlined by company policy or relevant regulations, always aiming for a resolution that upholds ethical standards and ensures safety. Question 18. Strategic planning requires a robust and ethical approach to supplier selection. Imagine you are a project manager at China Railway Construction, tasked with selecting a key supplier for a critical component of an upcoming infrastructure project. You have received several competitive bids. One of the bidders is a company owned by a close personal acquaintance. While this company is capable, their bid is not the lowest, nor do they possess all the technical advantages of another competitor. However, you know that awarding them the contract would significantly benefit your acquaintance and potentially expedite certain logistical aspects due to your existing rapport. How should you proceed to ensure the project's success and uphold ethical standards? Option A. Discreetly adjust the evaluation criteria to subtly favor your acquaintance's company, ensuring they meet the minimum requirements while downplaying the strengths of other bidders. Option B. Accept the proposal from your acquaintance's company, as their capability is sufficient, and the personal relationship can help expedite logistical matters, ensuring the project stays on schedule. Option C. Initiate a formal, transparent, and objective evaluation process for all bids, strictly adhering to China Railway Construction's procurement policies and relevant Chinese regulations, ensuring the selection is based solely on merit, cost-effectiveness, and technical suitability, regardless of personal connections. Option D. Reject all other bids without thorough review, citing minor technical discrepancies to quickly award the contract to your acquaintance's company and avoid further complications. The correct answer is C. Initiate a formal, transparent, and objective evaluation process for all bids, strictly adhering to China Railway Construction's procurement policies and relevant Chinese regulations, ensuring the selection is based solely on merit, cost-effectiveness, and technical suitability, regardless of personal connections. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a conflict between achieving project timelines, key performance indicator for China Railway Construction, and adhering to ethical procurement practices. The pressure to meet deadlines can incentivize cutting corners, potentially leading to the selection of unqualified suppliers or engaging in unfair bidding processes. This creates a professional challenge, requiring a delicate balance between business objectives and ethical responsibilities, particularly concerning fair competition and the integrity of the supply chain. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes transparency, fairness, and adherence to China Railway Construction's internal procurement policies and relevant Chinese regulations governing public tenders and supplier selection. This involves a thorough evaluation of all qualified bidders based on predefined criteria, ensuring no undue influence or preferential treatment. This upholds ethical business conduct, promotes fair competition, and mitigates risks associated with unqualified suppliers, ultimately contributing to the long-term reputation and sustainability of China Railway Construction. It aligns with principles of good corporate governance and responsible business practices expected within the Chinese regulatory environment. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves accepting the proposal from the acquaintance's company without a formal, competitive bidding process. This violates principles of fair competition and transparency, potentially contravening Chinese procurement laws that mandate open and equitable bidding for significant contracts. It also creates an ethical conflict of interest, as personal relationships are influencing business decisions, which can lead to perceptions of corruption and undermine the integrity of the procurement process. Another incorrect approach is to subtly steer the evaluation criteria to favor the acquaintance's company, even if they are not the most qualified. This is a form of manipulation that bypasses the spirit of fair evaluation and can lead to the selection of a suboptimal supplier. It is ethically unsound and could be seen as a breach of trust and a violation of internal company policies designed to ensure objective supplier selection. Such actions can also expose the company to legal challenges if discovered. A third incorrect approach is to reject all other bids outright without proper justification, solely to expedite the process and favor the acquaintance's company. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the competitive bidding process. It is unprofessional, unethical, and potentially illegal if it prevents legitimate and qualified suppliers from being considered. It also risks damaging relationships with other potential suppliers and the broader market. Professional reasoning. Professionals in such situations should follow a structured decision-making process. First, they must clearly identify the ethical dilemma and potential conflicts of interest. Second, they should consult and strictly adhere to China Railway Construction's internal procurement policies and all applicable Chinese laws and regulations governing procurement and anti-corruption. Third, they should prioritize objective evaluation criteria and ensure a transparent and fair process for all bidders. If personal relationships create a conflict, disclosure and recusal from decision-making are paramount. The ultimate goal is to make decisions that are not only commercially sound, but also ethically defensible and legally compliant, safeguarding the company's reputation and long-term interests. Question 19. Investigation of a significant expense claim submitted by a direct manager for a project, which appears to be inflated and lacks sufficient supporting documentation, presents an ethical dilemma for a junior finance officer. The manager has subtly implied that expediting approval is crucial for maintaining positive project momentum and meeting departmental targets. The finance officer suspects the claim might not be entirely legitimate, but is hesitant to challenge a superior, fearing professional repercussions. What is the most appropriate course of action for the finance officer, adhering strictly to the principles of financial integrity and regulatory compliance within the context of China Railway Construction's operational framework? Option A. Directly report the manager to senior management or external regulatory bodies for suspected financial impropriety, without first attempting to gather more information or discuss the matter internally. Option B. Ignore the questionable expense claim and hope that it passes through the system without scrutiny, as challenging it could create unnecessary complications and jeopardize the finance officer's career. Option C. Thoroughly review the expense claim against all relevant company policies and supporting documentation requirements. If discrepancies or insufficient evidence are found, politely request further clarification and documentation from the manager, explaining the need for compliance. If the manager is uncooperative or the issue persists, escalate the matter through the appropriate internal channels, such as the finance department's compliance officer or internal audit, while maintaining a professional and objective stance. Option D. Approve the expense claim as submitted to avoid conflict with the manager and ensure project targets are met, assuming the manager has valid reasons for the expenditure that are not fully apparent. The correct answer is C. Thoroughly review the expense claim against all relevant company policies and supporting documentation requirements. If discrepancies or insufficient evidence are found, Politely request further clarification and documentation from the manager, explaining the need for compliance. If the manager is uncooperative or the issue persists, escalate the matter through the appropriate internal channels, such as the finance department's compliance officer or internal audit, while maintaining a professional and objective stance. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between business objectives and ethical conduct, specifically concerning the integrity of financial reporting and compliance with China Railway Construction's internal policies and relevant national regulations. The pressure to meet targets can create an environment where shortcuts or misrepresentations might seem appealing, but such actions undermine trust, expose the company to legal and financial penalties, and damage its reputation. Careful judgment is required to navigate this situation by prioritizing ethical obligations and regulatory compliance over short-term gains. The correct approach involves a commitment to accurate financial reporting and adherence to established procedures. This means meticulously verifying all expense claims, ensuring they are legitimate, properly documented, and align with company policy and the spirit of the expenditure. This approach upholds the principles of transparency, accountability, and integrity, which are fundamental to sound financial management and corporate governance under Chinese regulations governing accounting and financial reporting. It also aligns with the ethical expectations of professional conduct within China Railway Construction, fostering a culture of honesty and diligence. An incorrect approach of approving the expense claim without thorough verification, despite reservations about its legitimacy, represents a failure to uphold professional due diligence. This could be interpreted as complicity in potential financial misconduct, violating internal controls designed to prevent fraud and mismanagement. Such an action directly contravenes regulations that mandate accurate record-keeping and prohibit the falsification of financial documents. Another incorrect approach, that of directly reporting the manager to higher authorities without first attempting to resolve the issue internally or gather more information, might be seen as an overreaction or a failure to follow established grievance procedures. While whistleblowing is important, a measured approach that seeks clarification and resolution through appropriate channels first is often preferred and may be stipulated in company policy. However, if the manager persists or retaliates, escalation becomes necessary. A third incorrect approach, that of ignoring the discrepancy and hoping it goes unnoticed, is a clear abdication of professional responsibility. This passive stance allows potential financial irregularities to persist, increasing the risk of detection later with more severe consequences. It demonstrates a lack of integrity and a disregard for the company's financial health and compliance obligations. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Understanding the facts. Gather all relevant information about the expense claim and the context. 2. Consulting policies and regulations. Refer to China Railway Construction's internal expense policies and relevant Chinese financial and accounting laws. 3. Seeking clarification. If possible and appropriate, discuss concerns with the manager to understand their perspective and clarify the nature of the expense. 4. Escalating concerns. If clarification does not resolve the issue or if the situation warrants it, report the concerns through the designated internal channels, e.g., to a supervisor, compliance department, or internal audit. 5. Documenting actions. Keep a record of all communications, decisions, and actions taken. 6. Prioritizing integrity. Always act in a manner that upholds ethical standards and regulatory compliance, even under pressure. Question 20. What factors determine the ethical and regulatory appropriateness of awarding a construction materials contract to a long-standing acquaintance when other bids are being considered? Option A. The personal history and existing relationship with the acquaintance, prioritizing loyalty and past business dealings. Option B. The perceived speed and ease of negotiation with the acquaintance, assuming their bid is reasonably competitive. Option C. The potential for future personal benefits or favors from the acquaintance, regardless of the bid's merit. Option D. The thoroughness of the objective evaluation of all bids against predefined criteria, ensuring transparency and compliance with procurement regulations. Correct answer is D. The thoroughness of the objective evaluation of all bids against predefined criteria, ensuring transparency and compliance with procurement regulations. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a classic ethical dilemma involving potential conflicts of interest and the obligation to act in the best interest of the company and its stakeholders, specifically in the context of procurement for a major infrastructure project. The challenge lies in balancing personal relationships with professional integrity and adherence to procurement regulations. The pressure to award a contract to a long-standing acquaintance, despite a potentially more competitive bid from another supplier, requires careful judgment to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes transparency, fairness, and adherence to the China Railway Construction's procurement policies and relevant Chinese regulations governing state-owned enterprises and public procurement. This involves a rigorous evaluation of all bids based on objective criteria, such as price, quality, delivery timelines, and technical specifications. Documenting the entire decision-making process, including the rationale for selecting the winning bid, is crucial for accountability and to demonstrate compliance with ethical standards and regulatory requirements. This approach upholds the principles of fair competition and ensures that company resources are utilized most effectively, thereby protecting the interests of China Railway Construction and its shareholders. Incorrect approaches analysis. Prioritizing the relationship with the acquaintance and overlooking a superior bid from another supplier constitutes a failure to uphold the principles of fair competition and could violate anti-corruption regulations. This approach introduces a conflict of interest and may lead to suboptimal outcomes for the company, such as higher costs or lower quality, and could expose the company to reputational damage and legal repercussions. Accepting the acquaintance's bid without a thorough, objective evaluation of all proposals, even if it appears competitive, risks violating procurement regulations that mandate a transparent and merit-based selection process. This can be seen as favoritism, undermining the integrity of the procurement process and potentially leading to accusations of corruption or unfair business practices. Attempting to subtly influence the evaluation process to favor the acquaintance's bid, even if the bid is not the absolute best, is a form of unethical conduct. It compromises the objectivity of the decision-making and can lead to the selection of a less suitable supplier, ultimately harming the company's interests and violating ethical codes of conduct. Professional reasoning. Professionals in such situations should follow a structured decision-making process. First, they must identify any potential conflicts of interest and disclose them immediately. Second, they should consult the relevant internal procurement policies and external regulations to understand the strict requirements for bid evaluation and contract award. Third, they must ensure that all bids are evaluated objectively against predefined criteria, with thorough documentation of the process. If there is any doubt or complexity, seeking guidance from legal or compliance departments is essential. The ultimate decision must be justifiable, transparent, and demonstrably in the best interest of the organization.